It was a very sad day last year, and I just personally think that it took us all a while to kind of adjust to the fact that the Queen was no longer here, because she had been. I mean, from almost everybody that certainly I know, she had been the only monarch that we'd ever known. And maybe in our lifetimes we will see yet another, because maybe Charles won't last for your lifetime. He probably lasts for mine, but he may not last for yours. He may not last.
That's very optimistic of you. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you. But you know, it's very clear that he's not going to last as long as she did, certainly.
I think so. I mean, one of the reasons we feel such a sense of loss, really, is because, you know, the Queen wasn't just a sort of matriarch, and she wasn't just our Queen for 70 years. She was in the public eye for 96 years.
Yes.
And we tend to view history in terms of centuries, and a century is essentially our collective memory. Yeah. And the Queen was the constant throughout the entirety of our collective memory. The monarchy is 1,000 years old. The Queen lived through 1/10 of that 1,000 years of monarchy. And she was also ubiquitous. You know, if you think about all of the billions of coins and notes and stamps here in Canada, Australia, elsewhere, the Sex Pistols T-shirt, she was iconic, and she was the most representative and most recognised person in the world.
Yes.
And she was, I think, the world's premier figure of constancy when everything else around her was changing. And so it wasn't just a loss for Britain or for Commonwealth, but it actually shook the world to think, my gosh, the Queen isn't there. Yeah. And people will say the Queen of Denmark and the Queen of the Netherlands, but when you say the Queen, everybody around the world knew who you were speaking about.
And her quintessential, I think, art, in a way, was that she was quintessentially British. That, you know, whatever her reaction was to anything, you could look at that and go, well, that's what the Queen would say, because she knows what Britain is all about. And I wonder whether part of the loss of that identity in this country has followed since her passing, because now, you know, I'm not saying Charles is any less British, but he doesn't quite personify the Britain of his mother.
I would say, that the funeral of the Queen marked the end of a glorious era, and we will never see an event like that again, not just in our lifetimes, I think ever. If you think about it, when we look at the great iconic moments of British history, the funeral of Churchill, the 52 coronation, VE Day 1945, the Battle of Waterloo that we won, the death of Nelson, those are like this.
The election of Tony Blair. No, I'm only joking.
No, but this takes its ranks alongside those events, you know. And this was the grandest funeral we will ever see, because the Queen died in Scotland, so we had all of this panoply and pageantry also in Scotland. The Queen's last gift to the Union, actually, was to die in Scotland, and reminding Scots she was also Queen of Scots.
And also reminding the rest of us that actually Scotland doesn't actually want to be as independent as everybody gets told by the likes of Nicola Sturgeon, the other self-appointed Queen of Scotland, who is no more.
And what this event did actually was united people, whether you were independents or for remaining in the Union, Republican or monarchist. When you went, for example, to St Giles Cathedral or to Westminster Hall, everybody came together, and you had a unity of the nation. And I don't think that there can be anything outside of the world of sports today which can unite the nation in the way that did. And unlike places like France that has Bastille Day every year, or America with Independence Day, the problems of being the world's oldest continuous democracy is we don't have an annual patriotic event where we can help forge national identity. So for us, it's things like coronations and state funerals that provide those rare moments when we can put aside our differences and truly come together, have social cohesion in communities, be it through street parties or queuing up for hours, and forge a new national identity. And I think that's what the Queen's death really helped signify.
All right, so if we forged a new national identity, are we still in the process of doing that, do you think, or have we forged it? And if so, is it a different identity from the one that we had before she died?
What I would say is that with the Queen's death, it actually served to remind all of those naysayers who said that traditional Britain is dead, that old Britain is passé and forgotten. No, it's still alive and well. That in this whole country there are patriots around for whom institutions and tradition and the monarchy matters, despite what you may get from our cultural elites and what you may hear on the mainstream media.
I agree with you. I think the whole week of the funeral, because it was a kind of a week of mourning, if you like, totally proved that. And also, in a funny sort of way, so did the coronation of Charles, because everybody thought, well, the next guy's not going to be that interesting, it's not going to be that much of a tourist pull. But it turned out that the coronation, I think, so far this year, was the biggest and most watched event on the BBC.
I'm reminded of G.K. Chesterton when he said, "For we are the people of England who have not spoken yet."
Yes.
And there is still people, you know, it's an old hackney trope of speech, but there is a silent majority in this country. And I think the King can be rightly happy and pleased that a year on now, he has been accepted by the public, and I think he can be encouraged by the polling results that we've seen, which has shown a healthy majority are in support of him and think he's doing a great job, and support for the monarchy has remained constant from where it was, say, 2 or 3 years ago.
And he's actually done okay, I think. I mean, that's kind of, I mean, I don't want to overburden him with praise, but he has done okay. I think okay is good, because you wouldn't expect him to be lavish, you wouldn't expect him to be revolutionary, and he has just kind of ploughed a steady furrow, which is sort of what we required.
Yes, I mean, this first year really is about him trying to get used to the role of king. So we don't yet know what type of monarch he'll be, but he's certainly taken to it with great gusto. I mean, he has done, at the age of almost 75, more engagements in his first year than the Queen did in her first year when she was only 25. Now, we don't know whether he's going to be a great reforming monarch. He's been too busy. We understand he wasn't expecting to have so much paperwork with the red boxes as he has had.
Yes.
You know, Lord Randolph Churchill said that Gladstone was an old man in a hurry. I don't know yet whether the king is an old man in a hurry. If he does have a reforming agenda, we haven't seen much evidence of that. What this year has been about is reassuring the public that constancy and stability are his two main priorities.
And I think in a current world where those are the two things that are sadly lacking from our political masters, such as we would call them, it stands out. You know, any kind of consistency, any kind of reliability, which we don't see at all coming from Westminster, must be seen as a good thing.
And that's the great value of monarchy. It is the rock upon which we can essentially look for some sense of grounding when everything around us seems to be so chaotic. And so I think that's why the king is at Balmoral today, not at Birkhall, which he prefers. He's gone to Balmoral because that's where his mother died, carrying on his mother's tradition. She would always go to Sandringham, where her father died, for accession day. And I think that's a little way of him saying, this is business as usual. I'm carrying on my mother's traditions.
And so are you quite optimistic then about Britain's identity and its kind of going forward personality?
I'm not optimistic, quite frankly, because of our youth. And I think the fact is, for all the stuff that we're saying and for all that the funeral has done to reassure those of us who were concerned that we were losing our identity, when you look at people who are under 30, they are not becoming monarchists in the way that it used to happen. They're not becoming conservatives more generally. In the old days, you get onto the property ladder and become a conservative. Well, capitalism has failed many young people.
Well, now they can't get on the property ladder.
I mean, if those under 30 had voted in the 2019 election, Jeremy Corbyn would have had a stonking majority of over 150. And why the Tory party doesn't realise that and isn't addressing that issue. And I think the monarchy needs to address that issue too. I've not seen anywhere in its reform agenda any sense that they're going to try to appeal to the youth. And if they don't win the youth, then, well, the battle is over.
Yes, I mean, I was seeing a note from America, actually, and I think it was something like 4 million teenage Americans will become the voting age of 18 come the next US election. And that's quite a lot of people who will probably, presumably, in their case, not vote for Donald Trump. But, you know, you can't be certain about that. But the similar argument is made here, isn't it, about Brexit? That, you know, the Remainers say, oh, well, of course, all the old people who voted for Brexit will all be dead soon, and then the youngsters will come back and will vote to actually go back in. I'm not sure that would happen, but I take your point about the kind of the lefty majority.
Well, you can't blame them, because they're not taught about any of this. You know, fewer than 10% of teachers vote for centre-right or Tory or the Conservative Party, right? When I was at university, you would have, I think it was 2 to 3 Liberals for every Conservative. Now it's something like 11 or 12 to 1. And so you can't blame students for, you know, the old adage of Aristotle was, give me a boy till the age of 7 and I'll show you the man. Well, now it's give me a child who's been brainwashed till the age of 21 from primary, secondary and university, and I'll show you somebody who hates this country, who loathes it, and is full of ideas of decolonisation and white guilt and white supremacy.
Right, and looks down upon anyone who doesn't have a degree.
And sneers condescendingly at those people who actually have escaped the woke madrasas.
Yes, exactly right. Speaking of the 1-year anniversary, do you remember where you were when you heard that the Queen had passed away?
Well, those of us who were involved in this, we sort of knew it was coming. The Buckingham Palace always underplays its statements. And when Buckingham Palace said that the doctors were concerned for the Queen's health, those of us who knew realised what was happening. And so, yes, I was basically putting my shoes on, getting ready to go to do the commentary.
Yeah, absolutely. Rafe, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed.